him, you're talking about a single creature?
Yes. He was young, like a young hairy creature, friend, Yowie. I never recognised him as Yowies at that age. I just thought him as a friend.
And how old do you think you were when these sort of incidents started happening?
About 3, 4.
So you would be outside by yourself?
Yep.
What did you and the creature, what were you sort of doing? Do you remember that, or do you remember experiences?
Digging up roots, playing with grubs. I ate many different things, always came back filthy.
This was in the bush surrounding your house?
Yes, and my mum's banana plantation.
Okay, so you would be together just alone, basically, you and this thing?
But in the background, I remember would have been his parents, the adults.
Did you ever tell your parents about this at the time?
I remember saying something to my mum, and she thought I just had a imaginary friend. When I moved back to the property after moving away, I had more incidences of the same one being there with me.
Can you describe it to me? How tall was it compared to you?
Compared to me, probably twice my height. I was 3, so I was probably 2 and a bit foot or whatever. And he towered over me. But I remember it being male.
Was it covered with hair?
Yes, a reddish brown. Not a really red, but a brown with a bit of red tinge through it.
Was the hair the same length all over the body?
Basically, yes. It looked like he looked after himself. It wasn't rough or scruffy, and he was clean.
Describe its face to me. Was it a human-like face or an animal face? I mean, did it remind you of a human or a monkey?
More of a human face with a bit of ape-like quality.
Did it have a flat face or did it have a muzzle like a monkey?
It had more of a, not flat, completely flat, but not completely like a muzzle. It was like in between, more of a rounded face. It's hard to explain.
Okay, was there hair on the face or was it obscured?
It was clean. There was a bit of hair on the face, but not too much.
Long hair or was it fairly short, like a short-haired dog?
No, it was fairly long. It would probably be now, if I remember, about 10 to 15 centimetres long. He was a friend, and I looked at him as a friend, and I didn't look at what he was.
Did it ever communicate with you in any way?
Yes, not vocally, like there was a grunt occasionally or whatever, but it was more like in my mind, like thought process. And
Okay.
He didn't communicate as, like, in words, but he communicated in feelings. I remember noises, but most of it was in my head, like I could hear what he was thinking and feeling.
Did it smell at all, the creature?
Yes, it depended on the time of the year. More of a sweet smell, like the spring and summer, really sweet fruit, or like when you've walked into a lot of blossoms and it's a sweety, but overpowering, pungency, sweet smell.
Is this something that you've always had as a conscious memory, even from childhood?
Yes.
I mean, how long did it extend up to? Was it into your teens, or did the incidents end before that?
The incident ends before that because I moved away from the property at about the age of 8.
Age of 8. And you were still having encounters with this thing up to 8?
Not as frequently. I remember more when I was younger.
Tell me about some of the incidents. You mentioned it very briefly, the sort of things you would do, but, I mean, was it a case of just seeing this thing, or was it occasion that it would actually be quite up close to you and doing things, or how did...
Like, be sitting there and digging in the same hole, like rolling over a log and picking up bugs and beetles from under a log together. Like, we've pushed the log over together, or the rock.
Just tell me some of the other things you might do with this thing. Was it mainly you'd be...
Playing a bit of tag. Like, just playing.
What, it would hit you and you would hit it, or...?
Yeah, like, not hit, but, touch and run, and we're like two small children playing together.
Okay, were there other times where you wouldn't do things together, but you would just see it, or were they always incidents where you would end up doing stuff together?
A bit of both. Sometimes I'd see him. If there was other people around, it would be... I'd see him, and it was like... I knew I shouldn't say anything, tell anybody about, but I knew he was there watching.
You said you talked to your parents at some point, but after that you never told anybody?
No, not at all. Not until now.
The encounters you had with this thing, was it always the same creature? I mean, it was pretty much the same individual?
It was the same individual. His parents were always in the background, like watching or being protective. We were playing together like two children would play together. And they were there if we got into trouble or something to sort of make sure that we didn't get hurt.
Tell me more about that. You said the parents. Describe them for me, I mean both of them individually.
When I was young, I remember them as huge but protective. They'd be there, always in the background, just keeping an eye on us, off doing their own things.
Were they bigger versions of the thing you were playing with, or did they look different? Or I mean,
A lot bigger version of the same what I was playing with.
What colour were they?
Roughly the same browny colour with a bit of reddish through them.
What would they do while you were playing? Were they just standing in the bushes, or were they closer, or were they in full view, or slightly?
Sometimes they were in full view, sometimes they were... It sort of felt like they were giving instructions on how to do something. Like if we were looking at different bugs or playing with whether it was a grub out of the woodwork or something, they sort of came along and weren't actually close up, but they were in the mind teaching you how to, what was safe to handle and what was not.
How would a normal encounter go? You would just decide you wanted to play with your friend, or how would you know it was there, or how would you actually connect?
He was there in my mind. I could feel him. I could sense him. I would be walking along and I could just feel him there. It was like we didn't call each other or anything. We'd be doing something and he would be there beside me.
Well, how long would you play together when you were playing? Would it be for minutes?
Hours at a time. Sometimes it was only minutes. Other times it was hours. As a young child, my mum was running a banana plantation and working in there. I knew the boundaries of the property. I was always within the distance of calling for her, or she could call me. And because she was working, I was off playing. Where we mainly played was near the banana packing shed.
Were there many workers on the plantation?
No, just my mother and maybe another worker or two.
Is it possible to estimate how many times? Once a week or every day? Or
Varied from every day to once a week, or sometimes even longer in between.
By the time you were 8, how often were you sort of having these encounters?
Probably once a month.
Okay, and at 8 years old, what were you doing? I mean, obviously at 3 you'd be mucking around, but at 8 were you doing anything different, or just basically the same thing?
Basically the same thing. Into climbing trees and going higher and wandering further and further away from what would have been home base, but not going very much further. Looking more at what animals were around, what bird life, different things like that too. More like I'd climb trees and he'd help me down. He'd help me down if I was getting stuck or got too far up, or if I tried to get up somewhere and I couldn't get up, and he'd help me up.
Did this creature walk like a human, or was it hunched over or straight up? I mean, did it just walk like a person?
Walk like a person.
When it climbed trees, did it seem a lot more nimble and agile than you, or?
It was slower, but it was very agile. Like its movements were more deliberate, more obvious that it was thinking about where it was going.
Did you ever see it run?
Yes.
Did it run the same speed as you? Was it faster or slower?
It was a lot faster. Very hard to catch when I was playing tag. I don't remember vocal much at all, because I felt most of it in the mind. As an older person, I know it's now telepathic communication, but that's how I felt most of the reactions from my friend.
All of the time that you were with this younger one, was its parents always around, or were there ever times you just played alone together?
Just played alone again occasionally. As we got older, it was like they were less vigilant and needing to be close.
Do you ever encounter them in any other part of the property apart from that small patch near the sheds?
As a young child, no. As an adult, yes. The property that held the bananas, or where we grew the bananas, was adjoining the property that had the house on it, and there was large piece of scrubland in between, roughly about 8 acres of solid bushland, and in that is where we mainly played.
You moved away,
Mm-hmm.
and then you came back. How old were you when you came back to the property?
I was in Year 6 in primary, so 11.
10 or 11. Was it the same build as a child, or was it, bigger or wider or more muscly?
A lot larger, like broader, wider, like a fairly heavy-set, well-built person. He was roughly twice my size all over, like wide. When I first remember it, he was that much wider than me. I was high.
What sort of stuff did you see it eating? You actually saw it getting the grubs out of the timber itself?
Would get the grubs out of the timber together, and I ended up eating them as well.
And how did he get them out?
With his fingers, he'd break the timber apart. Occasionally, if it was tips tough. He'd have a fairly hard stick and he'd break into it further.
Did it have hands like a human hand?
Yes. And fingernails.
What kind of fingernails?
Like human fingernails.
You mentioned that you didn't have as many actual encounters with the thing once you returned when you were older.
Yes.
Did you ever see the creature again after you came back? There was quite a long gap after you returned.
Yes.
Was it possible that it wasn't there anymore?
No, it was there. I could. It wasn't there all the time, but occasionally I could sense that he was there somewhere. Like the feeling that he wasn't very far away. I moved out with my boyfriend, had a couple of children, lived in Sydney and so on, and moved back to the family house. Started happening just after my father of my children left me. I had a boarder living there, and he kept on telling me, he kept on seeing this face peering in through the window, which where his bedroom was the low side of the house. Other night, he'd see it come through the lounge room, and it scared him. You could see it through the lounge room window. And things just started to happen, and I started to see him physically again. It started through the windows. It was like he was inquisitive looking. At first it was the face through the window, and then it would be like a silhouette, like it was there, like, but it wasn't. And then it was whole forms. Then you'd hear him calling.
What was the sound like?
A hum. He would hum. And I could always tell when he was happy because you'd hear this hum. I talked to another friend that was there at the time, and she could hear the hum, but her boyfriend couldn't.
You definitely saw its face at some point.
Yes, sitting in my lounge room watching TV overnight. I'd feel something and turn and see.
And it was the same creature that you...
Yes, but a lot older. You go? Like a grown-up, hairy friend. It was the same one. I could sense it was the same one. It looked like the same, and it just brought back a whole lot of memories, and that's when it sort of made sense. Childhood memories that you think, oh, well, was they dreams or imagination? And then when I started seeing them again, I remembered that I realised they weren't dreams or imagination. So I talked to a couple of my friends about it, a girlfriend, and I chatted to her, and she's sort of like, yes, it could be possible, but she's the sort of person that she has to see to believe. Probably about a month later, she was at a house which was further up from mine, visiting her boyfriend, went outside to the outside toilet, and as she was walking to the toilet, she could smell a sweet rotten smell, and she thought, oh, the septic's playing up, or the outside toilet's playing up, and she's turned around and he was there, probably 8-10 foot away from her.